I mean, regularly paying with Bitcoin, right? Because I believe this is also a problem. Merchant adoption has risen, but people using Bitcoin are not. So that's one thing I'm trying to do, is to use Bitcoins to promote in a bar where I work at. I mean, the one that I'm here 2 times a day, drink coffee. I want to put them up on Bitcoins and start using them. And I think this is one way. We Bitcoins need to be proactive. We need to push for this. If we won't, then most merchants will not see that much interest.
Yeah, for me, it's 2 topics kind of. So first thing, as you said, is the difference between the mass adoption and also using Bitcoins. Because for me, I'm not using Bitcoins, I'm holding Bitcoins. And for the mass adoption, it's also important, 2 topics that haven't been mentioned yet, is on the one hand, the security system right now. I think it's for most people, or for a neighbor or somewhere else, it's not convenient enough and yet. And on the other part is the tax issue. It's in Europe is we have to solve that. So we have to wait for the EU for the VAT announcement or decision in summer. So that's also a problem. So the uncertainty is still a little bit too big.
Also, I would add another topic, and I think it's important, is the education aspect. I think there is not enough education available to people, or to, in general, to attract new users of Bitcoin. If you think of yourself, just think of how did you develop your habits and the ways you deal with money and cash and non-cash transactions. This was a pretty lengthy process in your life. It didn't happen like, one afternoon you watch a video or something like that. So it's a rather, in my opinion, I think it's a rather lengthy process for a human being to develop ways and means and habits. How do you deal with money? How do you spend your money? How do you save your money? And so on. And now you need to transfer all of that into the context of digital currency such as Bitcoin. It's a little bit different. It's you need to think and understand how do you handle the security aspect of your digital wallet, which is a little bit different than your physical wallet, and so on. So I think a very education material with the feeling, with the touch, that would really educate the people and attract the people. And on the other hand, wallets which would be very seamless to use for people. I think that's what's missing.
Can the Bitcoin network scale on a global? I mean, if everybody uses Bitcoin, can it really scale the network?
I don't think that's an issue. I think it's a technical issue that will be solved when the problem will arise. And you can simply compare that to Gmail. I was one of the very early, very early user of Gmail. And I can tell you, which was closed beta, and at that time Gmail didn't look anything what it is today. And people who developed Gmail at that time have no idea that Gmail will look and work and will be architected the way it is today. And the same is with Bitcoin. It's a technical issue, and I'm sure that we can solve it. We're smart enough to do that in the human race.
Anybody else? No, it's technical.
Yeah, hi. You as a startup, the startups had to raise money somehow probably, or perhaps you're thinking about it. So can you talk about using Bitcoin for raising money? Like, I don't know, there's peer-to-peer lending in Bitcoin, there's the Lighthouse project which enables Kickstarter type campaigns, perhaps counterparty information like tokens, there are like shares or something. Have you considered this? Have you done this? What do you think about this? Thank you.
We launched in December, as I said, and so as we're doing better than we thought, we just actually got some investment. It wasn't much, but just for the next services we're building. And we don't have actually a problem because our background is with friends and people we know from our network is pretty good. So course, because in the Bitcoin scene, people are very, how you say, interested in investing in new projects. You can just see when there's an IPO of a new coin, people jump in without even know what's going on there. Yeah, so Bitcoin in terms of raising money is definitely an option.
Yeah, I think Lighthouse is a cool platform, but still let's not forget that to compare it to other Kickstarters and other platforms, there's a huge thing missing in Lighthouse, which is leverage you get from user base that Kickstarter has. So, I mean, for certain project it's extremely interesting, for sure, especially maybe more technical stuff that needs to be done, and people from Bitcoin won't understand it. But for maybe it's not that good for some commercial projects, which leverage is pretty huge from other platforms.
Yeah, definitely. We are interested in such funding. Unfortunately, there are also some other issues here, like we are at this moment not completely sure how to handle donations we get from a company. So there's this accounting issue. What do you do with Bitcoins? How do you account for that? Do you need to pay taxes at the end of the year if you hold the Bitcoins and they grow in value, and all those challenges? So we're interested and we're going to do that, but we need to figure out first what they're accounting for this.
I just want to add, I forgot, when you mentioned the crowdfunding aspect, I'm writing right now a thesis on how Bitcoin, or people that are involved into Bitcoin, have a different behavior in terms of how they donate and when it comes to charity. So how can Bitcoin change the way people donate in charity? And I actually think that this can be the best currency for charity. But yeah, so what I'm still to do my empirical stuff to prove it. Yeah.
Just a thought from my end. I think Bitcoin is interesting for a startup as a transaction network. For example, if you're in your founding round, or if let's say you're founding a startup, and then you have lawyers that prepare all the paperwork, and then the investors and the people who contribute the seed money, let's say, they need to actually do the transaction. So if you make it a rule, and if you agree as a founder, you say, okay, we will only accept investment in Bitcoin. First of all, it's very transparent, and and it can happen right away. Especially if you have investors who are coming from a global community. Let's say if you have people coming from all over the world, then even if it's like maybe 10 people or so, this can happen much faster, and it can happen, it's very transparent to all the investors.
Hello. I'd like to comment on a few things I've heard here. From what I've heard, all the presentations, it seems to me that it was presented like Bitcoin is an innovative form of sending money with lower transaction costs and quicker. And on the other hand, you don't need to trust a third party. For example, losing money is not an issue and things like that. So, with respect to the latter, I would just like to ask, how many times has it happened that, some of you have lost money if you, for example, if you pay through PayPal or a bank or Amazon? For example, with me, with numerous transactions that I had with bank accounts or PayPal, everything was fine, nothing happened, so everything's okay. And the other thing, lower transaction costs and speed. For example, you mentioned that your fee is 1%. So for example, if I sent €1,000, it would take 10 euro. Yeah. But that's, for example, that's the same fee that my bank charges in UK for sending money to Slovenia. So if I send £1,000, I get charged £10. Or if I send £5,000, I get charged £10. So basically, it's you know, it's better actually. So and when it comes to, I would say, when it comes to quickness, I don't mind if my funds come in 1 day or 2 days. I don't mind that at all. So basically, I don't think that that's so innovative as it was as you were trying to present. That's one thing, and on the other thing, just a comment. It's interesting how value of bitcoins or cryptocurrencies is always measured in national currency. It's always referred to national currency. So I don't think that cryptocurrency can replace national currency. It will always be there. So that's one thing. On the other hand, on the issue of can we live without a bank, every merchant which accepts bitcoins has a bank. And even you, the startups, have a bank. You still need a bank to operate. So basically, and the other thing, banks don't just store money and facilitate transactions. They also offer loans. So I don't think that's a feature that bitcoins can provide to businesses on a larger scale. One point is because there are only 21 million in existence, so it can't expand. And volatility for me is a big issue, so just a few comments on the whole thing. So.
Okay, yeah, you listed a lot of questions, concerns. I hope I'll manage to answer at least some of them. Maybe you'll have to remind us again of some things. It's true. Usually when you transact with fiat currency using whichever banking method, either your bank, PayPal, or e-wallets that were mentioned today, all of that, usually as an end user you're quite protected, right? Because this is what they need to achieve. If they would force you to not have the security, you will not be their user, right? And you need to fight for the users. But there are two sides to this story, right? You're one of the users, but on the other hand, you have another user, that's the merchant selling stuff, right? And yeah, I mean, probably most of us never had problems with credit cards, with payments. Even if you have a problem and someone stole it, we went to the bank and we said chargeback. This is not very common, in Slovenia, but that's the way it is. You can just say, I didn't do that, and usually they will return their money to you. But that affects the merchant. I work in an industry, apart from Bitcoin, day job, where this is really predominant. I mean, credit card fraud is there, right? And we saw this clip from a movie where this guy was saying the same thing. He has a physical store, not an online shop. But in the States, the credit card fraud is really rampant, right? And it may not affect the user because the bank will always side with the user. They say, okay, we don't want to lose you, it's fine. You will keep your money. But the merchant loses their money, right? The guy there said that 10 to 15% of his volume goes to fraud, right? I understand that you as the end user, you don't care about that. But the merchant should care. The merchant should give you better prices, and this, as Sergey mentioned earlier, should be the motivating factor for you, right? All of us to use Bitcoins. And yes, you're correct. Currently, whoever deals with fiat meaning normal standard currencies that are based on, we all know what they're based today on, right? On gold standard or something else. Whoever deals with that cannot, it's really hard for him to achieve that without a bank, right? Even for a normal person, can you get a salary without a bank? I think that in Slovenia, in theory, it's still legally possible, but then you will have very huge problems if you want to achieve that. And basically, all of us here today, we are on the edge between Bitcoin and fiat currency. And this is a lot of Bitcoin startups and companies there are today, right? And this is also why the fees, right? Because you are saying that the fees here are actually higher or similar. Yeah, but you're talking about the border between fiat and Bitcoin. If you're talking only about Bitcoin, so whenever going to fiat, then the transaction fees are really low. Then you do not have this problem, right? So we are probably in some intermediate time period where, because of the predominance of the fiat system, it is impossible, almost impossible to work purely in Bitcoin. We're trying to discuss today how this could be better achieved, but yeah.
Well, I forgot to say one thing. I think the good thing about Bitcoin is that I do agree that banks charge too much for transactions because they don't. I do agree that banks charge too much for transactions. Yeah. So I think that this cost should be lower. And I think a good thing about Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is that they force banks to lower it. So another good thing about we heard that it offers access to financial services to certain people that normally don't have access. That I think is a good thing as well.
Yeah. And maybe you need to think about one more thing, right? I'm not sure if you follow this story, because I think it was quite big. I'm not sure how what they revealed everything, but there was this news last week or 2 weeks ago how some hackers stole huge amounts of money from some banks, right? It was organized during a lot of time. And obviously, I don't think any of the end customers ever noticed that, right? Maybe they stole that money from the banks, the end customers' balances were not affected. But are you sure that at the end you do not partially pay for those costs for the banks? Did we not put a lot of our money in our banks? Is this not a cost of transacting fiat currency as well? Maybe they just hide it from you and you don't see it, but it's still there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest use case is, I mean, for us, Bitcoin right now, the stage is developed. For me personally, it's just an add-on. Yeah? It's just something where I say, okay, this is nice for the future, it has a huge potential, and I can do some stuff right now, but yeah, the use case is not the biggest. The biggest use case right now